What is the importance that you will give to the role that values plays in a good management?
Okay, values contribute to organizations in many multiple ways. Eventually, you see, organizations are made by people, and people might belong to different organizations, and they might react, or we as individuals, we act and behave in different ways depending on in which organization we belong to. And values are those driving forces that tell us how we are supposed to act in a given organization. If you see an organization where management, a top management is committed to a given set of values, eventually people will have that as an example, as the guideline to behave. So values somehow become the environment, or they nurture the organization, telling people how they are expected to act on behalf of the organization.
Okay, and the morality that multinational enterprises use, do you think they come from a real concern, ethic concern, or an strategic interest?
I would say both. The way organizations behave has to do with strategy, the interests, right? As well customs, traditions, and a good respect towards a real concern for good ethical behavior. Now, morality is an ambiguous word. It might mean within a Judeo-Christian tradition, the religious beliefs, but it might as well mean the morals, the customs, the traditions that are played or that somehow are part of the organization and all the leaders, stakeholders. So morality, and especially in business, is a very important source for law. And morality is always composed of those customs, those traditions in where actors play and have different interests. So it's no wonder that those interests are embedded in strategic decisions.
How do you think we can match perfectly the mission and the vision of an organization with their members?
Well, perfection, I would say it is impossible to achieve, but as long as you try to listen to your employees, to your stakeholders, and they contribute to the drafting, the composing of the mission and vision, then they will see themselves reflected in that organization. So it shouldn't be top-down declaration, but it must be a bottoms-up construction where the values of the people engaged, of the persons engaged in a given organization, are eventually reflected.
According to Friedman, managers shouldn't spend the resources of the organization in charity or in social responsibility, in social responsible activities, because the only role of the manager is to maximize the shareholders'
Value.
What do you think about it?
Well, in order to understand Milton Friedman, you must as well be aware of the context when he wrote the ideas that he tried to spell. And I guess what he says is very clear. Managers are trained to maximize profits, right? To maximize rentability of the organization, profitability of the organization. Milton Friedman, and I agree with him in that part, claims that managers are not trained to arbitrage what is better for society. So it might be too risky to give them total freedom to decide how to spend the resources of the company, because managers are no any better than any member of society in order to decide how the taxpayers' money, for example, or the customers' money, or the money that is going to be used to pay the employees should be used in order to benefit or not different social interests. So in a way, what Milton Friedman says, and although you can interpret it in many ways, is companies might pay their dues, they should pay their taxes, and eventually society should have different ways to aggregate interests and eventually decide which social causes to support or not.
Which values do you think we still miss to add to the mission and the vision of Colombian enterprises?
Well, a lot has to be done. Eventually, I would say we have to include environmental values. And today there was an organization called Footprint Planet that showed how up to this point, August 8th of 2016, we have already expended all the resources that we as humanity need for the whole year. And we are 4.5 months short of ending the year, and we already spent all the resources, environmental resources. So I would say environmental concern in values like sustainability, care, justice towards future generations should be included in the values and mission-driven organizations that we have. Something else, It has to do with the processes, the way that decisions are being made. So in a way, more transparency needs to be included, so organizations are clear about what interests do they follow, and all the stakeholders, customers, employees, should be aware of how they contribute or not to the achievement of that specific goals. So every time you add transparency, you are making an organization better. And all the individuals that participate in different roles in decision making should have better information to make better decisions. So I would say a clearer judgment.
What was your first motivation to realize such a huge analysis about multinational enterprises in Colombia?
Well, I would say it is important to make explicit what are the engagements, the commitments that companies made in a given way towards society. So, because you see that the first declaration towards society in a given organization are the mission, vision, and so on. It doesn't mean that it's always truth. It doesn't mean that that's what they're really engaged to, but it's the public, let's say, voice that they give to society. So it's the first way to try to get to know those organizations and eventually see how they articulate their existence with society as a whole.
And finally, as future managers, what do you suggest us in terms of CSR?
I would say a lot of critical thinking is needed, because you'll see a lot of greenwashing, many initiatives that sound good, but eventually maybe are portrayed by those organizations that are not really interested in pursuing the common good. So as managers, you should be aware of many interests, many consequences of your actions, and eventually, let's put it this way, one big challenge for managers is to prove Milton Friedman wrong, in the sense that managers could be capable and should be capable of making wise decisions and arbitrating different interests for society. So eventually, the manager should be the wise leader that eventually could help shape society in a better way.